Okay. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? All right. My name's Courtney Piper. I'm president of Piper Communications. Thank you for joining us in person and virtually for the final of 3 events about angel investing. Some of you may have attended our previous events about what angel investing is and how to do it. Today, we'll cover these topics again, but through the eyes of women who are industry experts, entrepreneurs, and angel investors. After the panel discussion, we'll take questions from the audience. If you're attending virtually, you can enter your questions in the chat at any time. Before we begin, let me tell you a little bit about our event hosts, the Innovate 65 Alliance, the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, and the Knoxville Chamber. The Innovate 65 Alliance, which Piper Communications works with, is a coalition that develops, supports, and promotes Knoxville as a great place for entrepreneurs to start and grow a business. Founding members include Oak Ridge National Lab, the University of Tennessee Research Foundation, UT Research Park, TVA, the City of Knoxville, Launch Tennessee, Three Roots, Veteran Ventures, PYA, KEC, UT's Anderson Center, and the Knoxville Chamber. KEC is a business accelerator dedicated to changing lives through entrepreneurship. From food trucks to tech startups, KEC helps makers and inventors with classes, events, resources, and connections. Guided by its 5-year strategic vision, Path to Prosperity, the Knoxville Chamber is committed to its mission of driving regional economic prosperity. As explained in the Chamber's white paper, Capital Access Redefined, Knoxville's community of angel investors are key to keeping businesses here and attracting companies to our region. Women-led startups are an integral part of our economic growth. In fact, studies have shown that women-led startups outperform their male counterparts in revenue despite raising less money. More female venture capitalists is directly correlated with more female founders getting funded, said Gillian Musig, CEO of Seattle-based Outlines Venture Group. Some strides have been made in the past few years in the growth of women angels. According to a study by the Angel Capital Association and Wharton Entrepreneurship, 22% of angels in the U.S. are female. Of newer angel investors, those who started in 2014 or later, 30% are women. Why there are significantly fewer female than male angel investors and more will be covered in today's panel discussion led by Catherine Porth. Catherine is a director of Insights and Development at KEC. She helped lead Knoxville's Women in Entrepreneurship Group and founded Let Her Speak, a program at KEC with a mission to give women a voice, to facilitate deeper conversations, and to take action within the community to inspire change and build a stronger support system for women in business. Catherine, please introduce our panelists.
Right. Thank you very much, Courtney. So today on our panel, we have some pretty powerhouse ladies with us. We have Christina Montague, who is the managing partner of the Jump Fund, an early-stage micro VC fund with a mission to engage more women in angel investing and increase access to capital for female founders across the Southeast. She is also a partner in Next Wave Impact Fund, a female-led fund focused on investing in impact ventures through a gender lens. Christina serves on the boards of the Angel Capital Association, Launch Tennessee, the Tennessee Aquarium, the Footprint Foundation, and Teach for America in Nashville, Chattanooga. Her personal philosophy for both investing and philanthropy is invest in the change you want to see in the world. Thank you, Christina, for traveling from Chattanooga today to be with us. Thank you. Next, we have Karen Thomas. Karen is the founder and chair of the board of directors for Women Can Be Angels, a nonprofit dedicated to involving more women in angel investing through awareness and education, as well as founder and CEO of Agron Health, a health tech company aimed at health information equity for better health outcomes. She previously co-founded and sold Fishbowl, a tech platform with a proprietary algorithm for connecting startups and small businesses with specialized resources. And prior to becoming a serial entrepreneur and angel investor, she spent over 20 years in the healthcare industry where she held leadership positions at Fortune 500 companies and worked with titans of industry such as Ross Perot and Michael Dell. Thank you, Karen, for making the 4-hour trek from Madison to be with us. And last but certainly not least, Tricia Martinez. who is the managing director of Techstars Industries of the Future Accelerator in Knoxville. She is an experienced serial entrepreneur, investor, and activist who is passionate about driving large-scale impact through technology and innovation. Tricia was named to the top 20 founders of color by Conscious Company magazine and Hispanic Entrepreneur of the Year by USHCC, a top 100 fintech leader. Prior to Techstars, Tricia served as a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow at the Department of Energy, an alumna of the London Barclays Accelerator powered by Techstars. She developed a blockchain-enabled financial services platform, Walla. So thank you, Tricia, for walking down to our offices. So the first thing I'd really like to start by discussing with Christina and Karen, and Tricia, please feel free to chime in as well, is to discuss first what is an angel investor. Here you go.
So, at the highest level, an angel investor is really the first money in, right? Typically you might have a little bit of friends and family, so maybe your parents or some friends might chip in when you have a great idea. But angel investors are really the ones that say, I want to help you get that to market. I want you to get through proof of concept. I believe in you. I believe in your idea. And angels, unlike later money, tend to have more of a hands-on approach. They're not just bringing a check. They're bringing expertise. They're bringing their network. They're much more involved than, say, just somebody who's buying stock in your company later on.
Yeah, and I always like to have the analogy that the term angel investor started on Broadway, where if you just equate it with people who are investing in shows on Broadway, so you're either going to have a show that is a high flyer and return your investment, multiple times, or it's going to flop. So angel investors are taking big risks in these really early stage startups. We're investing in the entrepreneur, and that's why we're also really kind of more hands-on and more involved with the companies that are really early stage. Also, we probably should talk about the definition of an accredited investor. So you really can only do angel investing if you are an accredited investor, and you can look up the SEC guidelines around that, but you have to have a certain net worth or combined income to do that. And that really is just the SEC's way of helping to mitigate risk. Now with crowdfunding, a lot of people can angel invest. So there are ways to equity crowdfund, but most people, if you're involved in a network or a group or doing it individually, you do have to be accredited.
Good. Thank you for adding that. Yes. Yep. And I also want to introduce Erica Grant, who just joined us. So Erica is the founder and CEO of Quantum Lock Technologies. While pursuing her PhD in quantum computing at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, she created a prototype of the quantum lock in the fall of 2018. It's a hardware-software combination that generates random and unpredictable digital keys that can open doors, lock boxes, or access computers. She has a patent and received a grant from the Department of Energy's Innovation Crossroads program to build out the product and launch of pilot this year. A Virginia native, she received a Bachelor of Science in Physics from Virginia Tech, and last summer she was named Forbes Next 1000. I'd like to add she was also a winner of What's the Big Idea for KEC a couple of years ago too, if anybody familiar with that. So now that we've talked a little bit about, and Tricia, was there anything you'd like to add to that discussion?
I would also add actually that there are two different types of angels, and it develops over time, but you can be an angel as a hobby, but you can also be a full-time angel, right? There are a lot of people who have made really successful investments and taken big risks, who have created massive careers out of it and wealth for themselves and their families. But there are also people who just want to dip their toes in a little bit and do it on the side and try it out to see what that risk is like. And, it could be a hobby. So you don't have to go all in, and, it's not black or white. There are very different types of the risk you want to take and how much money you actually want to allocate.
So since we're on that topic, what are some of the ways, and maybe you all can talk about your own journey in stepping into angel investing, but then also what are some ways for people who are curious but not quite sure how to go, if they want to go all in? So how all did you get started? And then what are some other ways that people can get involved in that?
Yeah, so we started our first fund in 2013. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we just looked in our backyard and saw all men. We saw all men on demo stages, pitch stages. We saw all men investors around, and nothing against the men, but we were wondering, why aren't there women at the table? Why are there not women investing in this asset class? And so we just spent a year really exploring that, and went and did a lot of our own education with Golden Seeds in New York, is the largest network of women angel investors in the country, and then decided that we were going to start a fund. And so the different types are that you could join a fund as a limited partner, and that is kind of similar to a venture capital fund, but we like to call them angel funds because we are investing at this really early stage. But it's collected capital. So there's a commitment up front. That commitment is called over a period of years, and it's invested across a portfolio of companies. So you mitigate some risk in that. You have a quick diversification. Then there are networks, and so those are people who get together as individual angels, but there's usually some backbone to it. So there might be an administrative backbone, some things like Sheltawi's network, which is much more sophisticated, but there's a kind of a range of those networks. Although for anybody who manages those networks, you always hear that there's a lot of herding of the cats because everybody is writing individual checks into a deal. Sometimes there's a special purpose vehicle. I won't get into all the legal lingo, but some way that everybody kind of comes together to invest in that company. But again, it is kind of passing the hat and saying who's going to be into this deal. And then there are solo angels. And as Tricia was saying, those are people with much, usually higher net worth, who can then invest in multiple companies, because you shouldn't ever get into angel investing and just invest in one company. You need to diversify your portfolio. And the rule of thumb is at least 10 to 12 companies that you're either investing individually or through a fund or network to really get that diversification, because companies, as I said, on Broadway are going to go really big, or they're probably not going to return anything at all, and you're going to lose your money. So you just want to mitigate that risk.
So like most women I talk to, I stumbled into angel investing accidentally. In fact, my very first angel investment, I didn't even know that's what I was doing. Not a clue, right? So my husband at the time had a friend who was starting a restaurant and said, "Hey, I need some startup capital." And we said, "Okay, here's a check." Of course, at that point in time, I was a little frustrated with it. He didn't ask for a business plan. There was no paper on it. Like, it was as much of a disaster as anything could be. And so it really wasn't until I crossed over from my corporate life into my startup life where I had to actually learn about early stage capital, and that's where I found out what angel investing was, because it's not taught anywhere, right? It's not taught in your finance classes. It wasn't taught in my MBA classes. Like, no one talks about it. And the people we're used to teaching us about our financials, right, our wealth advisors, our investment advisors, they don't talk about angel investments because they don't get a piece of it, right? So no one is telling us about it. So we fell into it. And so for me, I had that same experience. I walked into a room and I'm like, I was one of, if not the only, women in the room, which was really unusual for me. And being, from Nashville, which is, a town that loves to network. There's lots of people everywhere. And so I started asking my friends. I was like, "Are you doing this? Like, where are you?" And they're like, "What is it?" And I said, "I know, that's what I said. You got to hear about this. Like, this stuff is cool." And so I started talking to people, and one conversation turned into 3, turned into 5, turned into coaching. And I was like, wait, I got a day job, folks. Like, this has got to be wrangled somehow. And that's actually how Women Can Be Angels got started. We just kind of grew as a word of mouth. So we just took angel investing, which is learned by word of mouth. Traditionally, it's men teaching their friends who happen to be other men, and we've kind of re-angled it towards women to spread awareness.
Yeah, so I got into angel investing mainly because I was on the other side of the table. So I was asking angels for funding with my businesses very early on. I had a lot of family members who would angel invest, so I had been exposed and understood how it worked. But seeing what worked and what didn't work for the angels I was working with is really what drove me to want to invest. And my husband and I are both founders. We build businesses together, and as entrepreneurs, we both said we need to get back to the community. We were given so much, and it's our turn now to give back. So of course we wanted to jump into angel investing. So we've set up our own family funds where we operate our own individual fund, and we allocate capital to companies that just excite us. We find companies through our own networks and the startup communities that we operate in, things that we're passionate about, mainly things that will create impact, solving big global problems in the deep tech, financial technology space. And then also my role as being an MD for Techstars means I personally select companies and get capital and get equity allocated in each from all of those 10 companies that I invest in. So while I'm not personally investing my own funds, I as an MD get equity in each company. So it's interesting because I want to make sure that I'm selecting the right companies because I'm incentivized through their success and to help coach them. And the role kind of acts as an angel because I'm there to coach them constantly, help them navigate the ups and downs, connect them to every investor or customer person that they want so that they can be successful. But, as an entrepreneur, I saw how valuable angels are. And I personally had to rely solely on angels because what we were doing was so novel and disruptive in the marketplace that a lot of traditional VCs didn't have the risk appetite to back us. So we needed these visionary angels who said, we believe in what you're doing and your vision and we want to help you run with it. So angels honestly can transform an industry. They can be the ones who are visionary as well and can help drive massive changes in markets. Without them, so many companies would not be successful today. So it's so important for more people to get into that space.
Yep. And Erica, I would love your perspective on the other side, the entrepreneur side too, of why are angels so important?
Yeah, like you said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm doing a seed round right now. And it can be difficult to find the right people, and having the right angel investors or venture capitalists who back your company is really important because you want to have somebody who's also a strategic partner, who's willing to make connections for you or bring some sort of insight into any area related to your vertical or your business. Or have entrepreneurial experience themselves who can give you insights and tell you about the pitfalls that they've experienced as well. So, it's funny you were talking about word of mouth. I feel like on the entrepreneur side, it also can be word of mouth a lot of the time. When in terms of finding the right people, you talk to one person who knows 5 other people, and you kind of meet several connections down the line. You find somebody who may be a really good fit for your company. So, yeah.
Yep. So it's definitely not about who has the money, but it's who are the right people for you in that moment. That can really
It's a
help
lot
you.
like dating.
Yep.
It is.
Yeah.
Only it's speed dating because, when you're that early, you need the capital and you need it quickly, but you don't want to make a mistake.
Exactly.
So, it's tricky that way. And it is, you gotta find the right match and get to know them and then get married and write the check, right?
Yeah. I think angel investors.
That's right. And then like tear through the marriage in a few years.
Yeah, angel investors I really do see as a partner in a business, and it's way more than just money for sure. Yeah.
So Trisha and Erica, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the companies that you have founded. Trisha, I know you wear many, many hats, but specifically about both of your companies that you've worked on.
Yeah, my company is Quantum Lock Technologies. We're basically trying to create the best in security for facilities. We see that in access control, you have these older legacy systems where you use a key card to get into a door. It's completely offline. It's hard to tell who's been in and when. And then we have these companies that are coming in and making it really cloud-based. They're giving all this access to data of who's been in and when. But now it becomes a cybersecurity issue. You're opening up all of this information to the cloud. And we are basically the bridge between physical security and cybersecurity. We're trying to open up physical security to all these awesome benefits that you get with cloud security, but we're doing it with completely random and unpredictable digital keys through quantum computing. So that's the rundown of my company.
And my husband and I founded a company called Walla, which is a blockchain-enabled financial services platform in sub-Saharan Africa. So we, for 7 years, were building an entirely new financial system. So half of the global population operates outside of the formal financial system, mainly in cash. And it's in large part because financial institutions were never designed for the vast majority of consumers. They're driven by fees, which disincentivizes participation for very low-income consumers. And so we went out to utilize blockchain, first started engaging with banks, which was banging our head against the wall for years because they just didn't recognize the opportunity in front of them. So we decided we need to avoid all large institutions and just go in it on our own, which was looking at blockchain so we could build an entirely new ecosystem. So launched our product in multiple markets in Africa around a crypto ecosystem where consumers could send payments anywhere instantly at no cost. They could pay for utilities, their kids' school fees, any transactions. And so, yeah, built and scaled the business. We were fundraising during the crypto winter, which meant all investors in the crypto space got really scared and turned away. We ended up having an acquisition offer that didn't go through, and now we are working through another acquisition. So it is a never-ending story, but there's just so much opportunity in the financial inclusion space, which was really what excited us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to hear from all of you because you have on the one side the investors that see the perspective of the difference that you're making in these or companies that you're investing in, and then on the entrepreneur side, what that difference has meant to you. And so I'd love to hear from all of you what have been some of your experiences or highlights of the impact that having funds given or funds raised has had on whether it's with some of your personal relationships or on your side with the businesses that you've started.
There are so many great stories in our portfolios. So we have two funds, and our first fund, as I said, was started in 2013, made our first investment in 2014, and that first investment was a sports fan engagement company out of Louisville, Kentucky that just exited this past fall. So we really love to talk about that one. But, we even kind of honed what our thesis was over the course of the two funds, and that we really started to be drawn more to investments that had what we like to call a double or even triple bottom line. So we are investing only through a gender lens. So we are women investors investing only in women-led companies in the Southeast. So our lenses gets narrower as you go down. Our first fund was not impact focused at all, but we really felt like we wanted to do things that products and services that we understood could have impact as women. Women make over 80% of all consumer decisions, and a lot of women investors are much more attracted to companies like Awala that have some other kind of impact in the marketplace instead of just the next widget. So, for instance, we have a company right now called Resilia. She's won all sorts of accolades. You've probably seen her in every entrepreneurship magazine. She was just recently in the Inc. 100. She's out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Savitri Wilson just wrote a book called Resilient about bootstrapping her company. And we met her actually through an article in Hypotamus where she was talking about, as a Black female founder, she was not able to find capital. And she had bootstrapped her first company to $1 million. And yet nobody would talk to her. And so I gave her a call. And I said, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. This looks like a really interesting product. It was at first a capacity building platform for entrepreneurs, and was just really nonprofits, and was just nonprofit facing. What she wanted to do was grow it so that it was a SaaS platform that involved both funders, so corporates, foundations, city governments, state governments now even, that could then help assess the impact of those nonprofits and provide them capacity building tools. So she's now grown this company where we put in some of the early seed investment. We helped to network her with other like-minded funders that came in as well, not only other women, including the other fund that I'm with, Next Wave Impact Fund. And she has to date raised $11 million and is now going after her Series B rounds. So each round of investment has a different letter that goes with it. You start with C, and then you go to A and B, and and you go on. And so she is right now at around 150 million in valuation for her company in just a 3-year time period. So that one I'm really excited about because she is really focusing on nonprofits and the funding landscape. And she's a Black female founder who is skyrocketing in the industry. So we're excited about so many of our companies. But again, it is about those relationships with the companies and really caring. I think at a base level, angel investing is about caring about these entrepreneurs, about what the company is doing, and how you can add value. I would do a side note. I'm going to hog the mic here, but we were talking about finding the right fit. Female founders have a tricky road in that sometimes there can be not right fit angels out there, particularly for female founders. So we have had some of our female founders really get taken advantage of. And so I just would be cautious. Money is dangled in front of you. You want to make sure what strings are attached to that money, what that relationship's going to look like, and really vet that person or even that fund or network to make sure it's, talk to other entrepreneurs who've gotten investment from them, because there isn't, kind of a one size fits all for angel investors. You want to just not take any money. Yeah.
Definitely not all checks are created equal, for sure. And it's really tricky because even if you do, know to look out for folks, sometimes you're in a position where you've got to have the cash to make payroll, and so people are put in positions where they are making hard decisions. But for me, one of the things I always tell people is that one of the things I love about angel investing is you get to vote with your dollar. Right? So if you want to see a change, if you want to see something come to market, you want to see something done differently, angel investing is one of the most powerful ways to do that. Because if these companies and these ideas don't get the early funding, you're not going to see them in the market. Right? And so that to me is one of the exciting things about it. And then, I love mentoring and teaching people, and I have, my deep domain is healthcare. And so, being able to help folks who you have a lot of potential to do a lot of good for folks, being able to help steer them and help them figure out what maybe they've tried that's wrong and why something's not working. And, without having to be part of the company, I can still help steer and help champion them. I love that.
I feel like we've covered a lot of things. I'm not even sure what the question was, but I'll talk about how angels specifically impacted me. And I had mentioned earlier that with what we were building with Walla, I couldn't rely on VCs, which was so frustrating because we had all these red flags in the VC world, right? Like we were a financial inclusion company, crypto, Africa, like these are all things at the time. Now these are one of the best things to have as a startup. But at the time, a lot of investors were scared of it. And so as a founder, it was my job to really show the vision and excite individual angels about the change that we could make and the financial opportunity that was there. And so I was very strategic about the angels I wanted to work with. However, all my angels were men. I struggled to find any female angels that were excited by what we were doing, or I think the people who just gravitated towards me ended up being men. And I was very specific on only working with angels who had actually built businesses themselves. So as a founder and now an investor, I think one thing that I've always struggled with were VCs who were very strict on their investment thesis, yet they had never built a business. And it can get frustrating as a founder to work with investors who have never built a business themselves because they cannot always empathize with what you are doing or what you are going through. And to me, empathy is the most important thing as a founder and as an investor. Like we said, Courtney said earlier, like female startups are known to be the most profitable and successful. Data shows that, yet we still receive less funding. And the same can go with female investors. We, not only lead our companies with empathy and make more strategic and sound decisions, but as an investor, we are putting our money with empathy and helping coach with empathy and helping build with empathy. And so I think that's where we differ from men. And I'll let, Erica, speak to a little bit of this, but There's something really frustrating as a female founder investor. Always questioned when I was fundraising if an investor was not investing in me because I was a woman. And that's always something that you have in the back of your head. You don't want to think that, but like there are always biases. And we even contemplated with having my husband, who is my co-founder, go out and fundraise. But you know, he ended up doing it sometimes, but like it just wasn't the right fit. And so that's something that's always at the back of your mind. And it's so frustrating because you just will never really know. And some of the engagements I had as a female fundraising were really negative with men, and I won't go into it, but like that's just the world we live in and the battles that women are up against. But on the other end of that, there are more female investors and VCs popping up. But there's also something that we don't talk about, which is the double standard that women hold against other women. And it's this weird thing where a woman almost feels like I've had to claw my way up here, and I'm going to be even more critical of female founders because I had to work really hard to get here. And so I actually struggled way more with female VCs and angel investors because there was this weird dynamic. And it's hard to explain on all, maybe Erica has experience with it, but it's frustrating. And these are all biases that you don't see and you can't talk about. But for a female founder, it is just a billion times harder. And a female founder of color, it is a cajillion times harder.
Yeah, in terms of my experience so far, I think I've had a really positive experience overall. Most of my funding so far has come from Innovation Crossroads and business plan competitions. And my experience I've done a lot of pitching through those types of venues, and then more recently pitching to a lot of VCs and angel investors. And I kind of get another aspect as well, where I sometimes get feedback of, oh, wow, I think it's so amazing that you're a female founder, and I'm really interested because you're a female. And I also kind of don't like that, because I want them to be interested because of all the work I put into it, because of the technology, because of the business plan that I've created. I don't want them to be interested because I'm a female either. And then I've also had some more pushback, I think, and I've thought, well, I wonder if it's because of the technology or if it's because I'm a female. So I've kind of gone both ways, where I've doubted people's interest or denial, I guess, of what I'm doing based off of something I can't help. Yeah, I think it's definitely challenging and difficult, and you can get into like a little bit of imposter syndrome and all sorts of things. Yeah, and I do think it's great when people are trying to encourage women. That's not what I'm not dissing that at all, but yeah. And also, I think one of your questions is how we used the funding. Yeah, that has been really great so far. With Quantum Lock, we got non-dilutional funding through the business plan competitions and Innovation Crossroads. It added up to around $600,000, and that has been just incredible for getting us to a pilot. We're hoping to pilot this summer, and that has really like geared us up for being able to do a seed round. And with that funding, we can put a lot of that more towards marketing and sales and building customer relationships, in addition to some product development, but we don't have to focus as much on product development because of these grant programs that we were able to be a part of. So yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur, is knowing when to take angel investment, because you don't want to take it too early and be so stuck on product development, because then you have to give up so much of your company and everything you've worked really hard on. But you don't want to do too late either, because you want to scale. So that's been, I've taken a little bit of a slower path, going more of the grant route, because I wanted to do it in a way where I could keep as much as I could, but not go too slowly either. And I think that was a really good balance for me. But yeah, I think that's an important thing to think about when you're an angel, probably as well, is what stage is this company in? yeah, because that's something I've had to think of from the other side. But
So we covered a ton of ground.
Yeah, I know. I
Going
was trying to
all the way. No,
address-
this is amazing. I love all of it. I love all
I was
the
trying
things.
to address your original question, but then I felt like I kind of
it's okay.
went, like,
It is all
around.
related. It is all related.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, like it is a tightrope act, right? So,
Yeah.
and especially as a woman, it is even more complicated because not only are you doing your typical tightrope act as a investor, as a founder, but also then you have this bias that is just weighing on your shoulders that you're carrying while trying to balance on this tightrope of what do I do? Who do I go to? Is this person trustworthy? Is this the right money to take or is this the right money? Do I need to scale fast? Do I need to scale slow? It's just, it is all of the things all at once, all the time, right? So one thing I'm going to bring us back to, which Tricia, and I love how candid and honest you were because I was in the back of my mind, I was like, hell yes. Yes, I agree with all those things. So there's plenty of data out there that supports that women founders typically have performed much better. They earn, I think, the study from Boston Consulting Group that looked at 350 companies as part of the Mass Challenge program. They revealed that female-run startups generated 78 cents in revenue, whereas male-run startups generated only 31 cents for every dollar of investment raised. There's a ton of other studies that are out there that not only support this, but also support that the representation and diversity of a founding team usually creates better ROI. There's also tons of studies out there that talk about the amount of bias, the way in which we are expected to pitch sometimes has also been seen as more caters more to male strengths than to female strengths. There's tons of studies out there that also talk to what Tricia alluded to, which is that women a lot of times are even more biased and harsh on other women. There's studies out there that support that. So there's a lot of things that work for us and can work against us as women. So why do you think it's so difficult what are some of the biggest areas that you think are the most difficult for women in the space of being angel investors or taking on venture capital or angel investments? I mean, that's a big, broad question, but something to tackle.
Yeah, one of the questions, sort of to Tricia's point too, early on that we got asked was why women? You know, why? I mean, most of the other venture funds, angel networks, were all men, and they're like, why is it important to either have female leadership in a fund, and or why would you only invest in women? You're narrowing your aperture too much. You're narrowing, that's too narrow of a lens. Well, to your point, if women are outperforming, and even when we started our fund, this data was out there, and it's just grown over time, that women entrepreneurs are outperforming men when they do get funding, which right now is 2.2% of venture capital. Less, it used to be closer to 3%. This past year, 2.2% of venture capital is all that goes to women. So we've actually gone backwards in time the past 2 years, which is really disheartening. Even though there's more female angel investors out there, we've got this sort of venture capital up the stream challenge. And so what we said was, we think there's an arbitrage opportunity here. If nobody is investing in women, and they are outperforming in the market, let's go put some money there. And women were really attracted to that thesis. We did have a few women. It was interesting because we kind of felt like we were running our own startup because we had all these, these wins against us. We were, constantly getting challenged on our thesis and challenged as just women in this marketplace where there were no other women. But we had women who were really successful business owners come to us and say, why should women get preferential treatment? Why would I have my dollars only go to women? Because I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I built my business. Why would I do that? And we're like, okay, well, then this isn't for you. Because you do have to see the path that we have to have more women's capital directed to women-led companies to move this needle all, because it is not moving with the state of venture capital as it is right now, which is wholly male-dominated. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I think that was well said. Yeah, I mean, and speaking to bias, this is a little off topic. I have that question about myself, actually, as a entrepreneur angel as well. I tend to, on the one hand, I know what folks are going through somewhere, because every adventure is different, right? That's just the way it is. But I do have an appreciation, so an empathy for, and sometimes sympathy for what they're going through, and can relate to it a little bit better. But at the same time, I do have that, I've done it, so you better suck it up and get to work, right? So I tend to be harder on them than my investor counterparts who just have corporate jobs and have just a different perspective on security and what hustle is.
So I think, speaking to what you said, I think one of the struggles, and I have this issue, like when I see female only funds, my mind automatically goes I don't think it's impact, but it associates with impact. And there's a bucket of like impact investing where it's like it's a good thing to do, and there's this overall bias, right? That like if you were investing in female-led or diverse founders, like that's nice, that's impact. And so to me, that's the big struggle, the hurdle we have to get over as a society, that like, sorry, bullshit, like it's not impact. Data shows that it's actually a better investment. So why aren't we doing this, and why is the VC community not waking up to that? And so I think that we have to get past this whole like impact lens. Again, I personally think all impact is good because you're solving problems that can generate a huge ROI. But there's this, sometimes in the VC world, a negative connotation with impact, that you can't possibly have impressive ROI if there's impact associated with it. And so we're still in this weird place where we need more female unicorns and successes to really show to the world, like, look, this is like, we are amazing and we will do these great things. And so, but we have a massive ladder to climb compared to men who are doing it, and it sucks and it's not fair. But at the end of the day, it's like all the female founders in my program, like I hear time and time again that they are, and it's common across all VCs, but like the goalpost is constantly moving. It's, you're talking with the same VC for a year, updating. You're getting incredible more and more customers and revenue. It's like, well, one step further, and it's like, at a certain point, what are you going to do? So that's why I ended up having to rely on angels, and why the angel community is so important, and why more women should get into this space, because you can relate more to other female founders who can change the world, and you can be a part of that whole cause. It's the angels are a very we don't talk about how important and crucial they are in this ecosystem, because without them, we wouldn't have a lot of these big successful companies. They're integral in the ecosystem.
And I'll just add one more thing to that as I was thinking. At the angel stage, you're investing in the person, the idea, right? You don't have proof of concept. You don't have traction in the market. Like it's really a gut play. So, you're really interested in it, and you're really believing in it, and you want to get involved in it. It's the change you want to see in the world, or it's not. And, for a lot of women founders, they're solving problems that they see. And the majority of consumption and healthcare included, but household decisions in the U.S. are driven by the matriarch. And so if you have women founders solving problems for matriarchs and women consumers, when they go to an investment group that is primarily men, they're going to look at that person, they're going to say, I don't recognize you, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, why is this a problem? And I don't think it's a problem, so I can't see the market opportunity in it. And so for that reason, they tend to distance themselves. And so there's that kind of at that stage, when it is this gut feeling and it is a relationship check, that relationship's not there. In fact, if you listen to the lady who founded Rent the Runway, this is exactly what she ran into. That the men that she would talk to would say, let me go ask my wife, or let me go ask my secretary. In fact, the number of women that have gotten funded by West Coast VCs, it's because they were solving a problem for their secretaries or some other women in their office, and they're like, oh, like that's really a thing? Maybe we should get on that. So I think there's that kind of hurdle. I don't have a good answer for that. Maybe somebody could found a company that solves that. Yeah. Anybody?
But I will say, to add to that, like, imagine how better the world would be, right? Like, obviously, if women ran the country and the world, we would be way better off. But
Obviously.
imagine if women put their capital towards really early stage businesses who are making a real impact in the world and solving real big problems. Like, we would be so much better off. And that's like the we won't know until more of us step up with our checkbooks and actually support those companies. And I think the difficult thing about angel investing is that it can look scary, right? Like, finance is scary if you're not a financier or not in the finance world, but it doesn't have to be. There's so many resources out there, like the Sheltowee Angel community, which my husband and I are a part of. Like, you don't have to go find all these deals and opportunities. I do that because I am inundated with them through my job. But you can go be a part of a community where you're working alongside other interesting people who share the same passions as you, and you see cool opportunities, and then you can throw some cash in if you want. So it can be as easy or as hard as you want it to be.
Yeah, and all said, so starting Women Can Be Angels, having a lot of conversations with a lot of women about why they're not getting into angel investing. It was so fascinating for me to talk to women who would readily write a 5-figure check to charity, who would look at me and say, well, I'm risk averse. And this is, if I angel invest, there's a chance I might not get my money back. And I said, there's 100% chance you're not getting any money back from that charity, but you were okay with that check. Like, what's the difference? And it's so funny when I talk to people and they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And so we have a cultural bias where we tell women, finance is hard, honey. It's not for you. Don't worry about it. Turn your checkbook over to your investment counselor or to your husband and let them deal with it. And so we think we give. We feel good about giving. So we participate in charity and we volunteer and we give, right? We don't charge. We don't even ask for a proper salary, right? This is all part of the culture, and it's all kind of pervasive, and it's all of these things that we have to get over, and just sometimes just asking the question, like, why would you write a check to charity and not to a company? Like, just ask the question.
I think too, so to your point, when you are giving money to these large organizations, you don't necessarily see the direct impact that your money just had on your community, because it gets filtered into this big fund. But when you are investing in Allie or Erica, and you're like, I can see Erica, I can talk to Erica, I can see exactly what she's able to do with my money, and it's that internal satisfaction of I helped create that, versus it going into this large fund, and you're like, well, I helped, but I'm not quite sure like what piece of that pie I really actually contributed to.
It's much more intimate. You're
yes, right. Yeah.
And I also think that like we need to get more comfortable though with failure. Like, failure is a good thing, and so like even if you put money in a startup that failed, like, you still created massive impact, because one, they created jobs, but two, maybe they were building technology to support single mothers who needed better food options during maternity. Like, they took great steps, they learned a lot, and now other companies started because of what that company did. And so you indirectly created huge impact within an ecosystem. And so, failure is not bad. Yeah, you need to be prepared as an angel investor to lose that money. You shouldn't be putting money in if you definitely can't lose it. But see it as you are also donating to a broader cause, for revolutionizing something, for creating real impact, and you can back those people that you really want to. Maybe you only want to back female founders. Awesome. Now you're helping more females be successful in the business world. Like, that's creating impact in itself.
So we've started going down this road a little bit, but I want to go down it just a little bit further. So the quote that Courtney said earlier, that more female venture capitalists is directly correlated with more female founders getting funding, which makes sense. Representation matters. Having a woman in the room that's like, by the way, this is a big issue. You guys might not know this, but this is a problem. Instead of them having to go to their secretary or their assistant. So based on that, more women participating in angel investing increases the likelihood of female-led startups to raise more capital and encourages more women to become entrepreneurs. So that's this whole cycle of this helps that, helps this, helps that in this cycle. So what are some of your thoughts on how we might be able to address this locally in Knoxville? I know some of you aren't based here, but you understand probably our ecosystem enough to know, like, how can we address this?
Yeah, and Karen can speak well to this as, also. But the key that we found is that through the number of networks and funds I'm in, and also with the Angel Capital Association, is that with women, it's really about education and community. You need safe spaces to be able to ask the questions about finance that you don't understand. You cannot be one of one or two women in a room full of guys who are throwing around lingo that you don't understand and writing checks left and right. That is a very uncomfortable, very risky space to be in, and women will walk away, because there are a lot of men who lead funds and networks and ask, well, how do I get women into this? I'm like, well, you need some women leaders who are going to bring together groups and going to sit down and have, maybe 10 to 15 women in a room and basically do like an angel investing 101. And it might be over a year or more, and get a small pool of capital together and try that. Or, find ways, so either to pool some capital and experiment with it, or get into some of these funds and networks that are already existing. There are some that are around the country, and try to direct some of those funds back here to the Southeast. Let's showcase some of the companies that we have in the Southeast. So through the Angel Capital Association, Jump Fund was able to play way above our small little two funds that we had that were less than $10 million combined, with, on a much larger stage where we could take companies in the Southeast and showcase them to these angel investors across the country, and get more capital for those companies. People otherwise aren't looking into the Southeast. I mean, it's the same thing that Eric and some of these other groups do as well. So there's that. So I think that education is key, and also this community piece is key, investing together. Whether it's on kind of a small scale, you developed a little special purpose vehicle. It's really, really easy to do this these days. There are these companies like Loon Creek Capital we use. A bunch of other ones, Assure, that will just quickly do an SPV. They'll produce the K1s for you. It's really not rocket science. I had a 20 plus year career in education through at the university level. This is not something that I did for a living until I started this fund really just as a passion point, and sort of had to drink from the fire hose learning about angel investing. But if I can do it, anybody can do it coming into this. I really think so. And, we had a really good team around us. There's a lot of capital being left on the sidelines. Women are going to control the majority of capital in the U.S. after 2030. So more than 51% of all capital will be controlled by women. So if we're not getting educated about this really early stage asset class, it's going to be at the detriment of female founders out there, I think, as well as the female investors. I think there's a lot of potential for women who have wealth, who could grow their wealth significantly and make an impact with it.
Yeah, absolutely. All those things. I would agree. It's education, awareness, and in a community setting. So we found that women like to learn in a group, and they like to do it in person. We tried other options that didn't work as well. So one of the things that we do is we spread awareness, we tell stories, and we ask questions, and we battle misinformation left, right, and center. Right. So touched on it earlier about the misinformation about risk averse perception. Like, if you're a human being, you're risk averse. It's hardwired into your brain for survival. The difference between the person who writes the check and the person who doesn't write the check is what they perceive as the risk. Right? The person who doesn't write the check perceives the risk as losing the money. The person who writes the check perceives the risk as losing out. So it's only where you think the risk is that defines where you go. Everybody is risk averse, period. So that's one of the things that we battle. The other thing that we battle, and we do this as women, I think everybody does this, but women, I think, especially battle with this, and that is thinking that other people have information we don't. Right? You walk into a room like, oh, all these investors know what they're doing. Yeah, no, they don't. They don't. They're guessing. They've got their formulas and they got their gut, and that's all great, and we all do that. But they don't. They don't have some magic formula. They didn't get some magic cheat sheet that you don't have. It's okay, promise. So breaking that down, providing a safe space, telling the stories, making it okay to talk about it and to feel safe, I think is going to be your biggest opportunity.
Yeah, I'll echo all that. There's zero formula. And then if anyone ever told you as an angel investor or an investor there's a formula, they are lying to you. It is the people who have become so successful maybe have seen some trends, but it's luck and timing. It's always luck and timing. So you just have the same amount of luck as everybody else, so you should definitely hop in. But with regards to Knoxville, I think, one, there are a lot of high net worth individuals here, or individuals who have the ability to deploy capital. And what needs to happen now is coalition building. Like, we need more education. Like you said, that is key. A lot of people are intrigued and want to dip their toes in, but they're a little scared and don't know how. And so the Chamber of Commerce, KEC, all these groups here have the ability, which is why we're doing these panels right now, to help mobilize and get people excited. And so, I've told the Chamber and KAC, look, Techstars is running for 3 months of the year. And then we have a beautiful, awesome, empty space. Every night we should be having investment clubs. Like, forget about your book club, join in the investment club. Like, let's just all hang out, bring in cool companies. And that's how we start learning and talking and asking questions. So I think if you're interested, reach out to the Chamber, reach out to KEC. There are people who want to help and to start building up the community here.
And Eric, from your perspective, what I would love is there's a general perception too that not as many female founders go after funding or think of that as a possibility for their business. And we struggle here in Knoxville, but I mean in a lot of communities, of finding women in a high growth sector that are the founders. So what is some of your thoughts from that perspective of how we can help enrich that in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point, is that not every business needs angel investing too. And it really needs to be something that needs capital to really fuel big growth. And yeah, you're right in that not as many women go after businesses like that. And I think for my personal background, my dad started a tech company when I was in high school. I saw him go in day out, just grinding away. And I jumped on board. I went with him to like trade shows. I just did like sales when I was in high school and early college. And I really got that exposure that allowed me to see, oh, really anybody can do this. And I think that's something that I think women maybe struggle with, having the confidence of just knowing, oh, I could just jump in and do something like this. There's so many resources out there nowadays to educate you and get you what you need to know in order to start a business. And you don't even always need to be the one who has an idea. You can find somebody else who has the original idea and bring your skill set to help be a co-founder. But yeah, I think building up entrepreneurial education resources through organizations like KEC or the University of Tennessee or Oak Ridge National Laboratories, Innovation Crossroads, or Techstars, these are all vehicles that we could be using to find those people who have those great ideas, who are going to help change the world, and encouraging them that, yeah, anybody can do this. You just have to be willing to put in the work, and that's really it.
Yeah, I think that's important. You got to tell the story, right? People do what they know. And so if they've never seen anybody do something that looks like them, it honestly doesn't cross their mind that that's a thing. That's even a pathway for them. I mean, I grew up in a family of people who went through corporate life. And so to me, the term entrepreneur was somebody who was a small business owner, who owns the local nail salon, who runs the local grocery store, and I love those people, but that was not anything I ever had any interest in. So people would use that word. I'm like, no, not me, right? And the irony of it is, like, I'm sitting here working with Ross Perot and Michael Dell, and it never occurs to me that somebody had to start that company. Like, didn't cross my mind, but I didn't hear stories, right? And unfortunately, like the big stories, like Elizabeth Holmes, like what not to do, as he's the youngest, female self-made billionaire. But even that, even the bad stories, it breaks that artificial ceiling that we impose on ourselves. And like, oh, well, she did it wrong. I can do it different, but somebody did it who looks like me. All right, that's a story that needs to be told.
Absolutely. I would say representation always matters, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Erica, did you have something to add?
The last thing I was going to say is that I think there's also this perception that for tech, like deep tech companies, you have to be this like Zuckerberg or, have Elon Musk, like some level of IQ genius. I'm not a genius. I have a PhD and I got that through a lot of hard work, but I'm definitely not a genius. And I think that for me is something that I wish somebody had told me when I was early on was, oh, you can do this. You don't have to be a genius. I mean, really, I want to say that to anybody out there who's interested in starting a business because, I mean, you have to use your head, obviously, and I'm not going to say I'm stupid, but I'm also, you don't have to have that high IQ, like, I think that's the perception people have. They look at these stories and you're like, oh, wow, well, I couldn't do that. No, you can. And when you can't, when you don't know something, find the people to help you along the way. And that's having good mentorship is another part of this, of what we're talking about. I hope that I can be a mentor to people because I've had so many great mentors myself. So.
Yeah, I think no matter what group I have ever been with, and I've been in the presence of amazing women I'm here with right now, but the topic of imposter syndrome always comes up every single time that I'm in these rooms of, look, I know I'm not, everybody always says, like, I'm not a genius, I just figured it out. And I think that's the thing, that we put that barrier in front of ourselves before anybody else has the opportunity to put that barrier in front of us of, no, I'm not good enough, I don't know enough. And it seems to be one of the big factors that stops a lot of this. Is that what you've seen a lot?
So there's a tricky line, right, between, oh, I can't do it because I'm not good enough, and like, I know my limits. Like, this is not an area I need to be doing. I need to hire somebody, or I need to not do it. Like, it's tricky. And so there's some of that getting to know yourself and getting, outside of your comfort zone, but don't get yourself into a situation where you really shouldn't be. Like, I mean, I'm generally not the dullest knife in the drawer, but I'm not getting into algorithms for security. So, because I know that. But if I ever needed that, I know I need to go find somebody to do it. So I would say, don't stop myself from doing it. That's a part of what I want to do, but know yourself.
Yeah, figure out what you don't know.
Yeah, one thing that's pointed to sometimes about women, and I do not like to talk about the deficits of women in this space, but it is both on the side of the investors and the entrepreneurs, is that we do have sort of a perfectionism bar that we're always trying to reach. So if you are an entrepreneur, you're likely a very type A personality. And thus, you probably have some perfectionism in your blood. And women even more so. So there is a tendency for some women to not let their product even get to market or kind of push it far enough to just test the waters because they want it to be perfect, right? So that happens a lot in tech with women. Not all the time. I'm just saying that is a common theme that we hear, is that kind of not just ready to let your baby go because it just, you want to get it to that just right. And then the same thing with women investors. So sometimes the criticism of female investors at this early stage is that we're too slow. Our diligence takes too long, and we are risk averse. Well, really, it probably goes back to that perfectionism. We want everything to be as lined up as possible before we're willing to write that check, right? That probably can't actually happen. So we do have to kind of just let it go. So in both cases, you kind of have to let go of that perfectionism, let go of kind of answering every single question, checking every single box, and just kind of let it go and see what happens. And that is sort of the big, why we call our fund the jump fund. It's about, jumping off, taking the leap, launching that. I mean, it's a real, leap of faith sometimes, but sometimes you just got to do it and see where the market's going to take it.
I think that probably all founders at some point deal with imposter syndrome until you're a second time around founder, right? Like, you start building up confidence, and it's the same thing as an angel. Anyone who's new to it, it's like, I don't really know what I'm doing, and people are going to find out, and I'm going to look like this horrible person. But I think women definitely feel it much more so, and it goes back to the storytelling. when I was operating in the fintech world, like I was always the only female Latina. Like it was always a room full of white guys, and that was uncomfortable for me. And I always had something to prove, and I felt like I shouldn't be there. But over time, imposter syndrome started going away because after 7 years of being in a market, you build up some sort of expertise and knowledge. But it is like I deal with it every day. I have imposter syndrome always, no matter what I'm doing. Like I never feel like everyone's going to figure out that I'm a fraud. And I think we all deal with that, but we just don't like to talk about it.
So let's turn then to the positive side of things. So we've talked a little bit about the negative perceptions that are put on us and some of the bias that's put on us. But in all of your experiences, what have been some of, and obviously there are things that are leading to women outperforming their male counterparts, right? There are things that we do very, very well that are giving results. So in all of your experiences, what have some of those things been?
So some of the data has shown that part of it is women do bootstrap a little longer. So they are kind of out there hustling because they can't get the early capital. So it's not as easy for them. So some people point to just that fact that you're, just kind of slowly building this and getting it to market. Then there is the concept that women are really pretty good on the management side, and they do like to build diverse teams. So they don't build teams of just women. They like to have diversity around them, which also has been a proven factor in performance, because the more diverse people you have and ideas you have thinking about a concept and getting something to market, the more successful your product or service might potentially be, because you're just widening your aperture. And then the management side, so think about the number of women in human resources. I don't even know what the exact percentage is, but it's pretty high. And so women tend to be pretty good managers. So a lot of entrepreneurs can start out and be great founders. They often don't make very good CEOs because they can't manage the growing teams that they have. So women actually, because they kind of bootstrap a little bit, grow their team out, and then they're pretty good managers. So once they get to the point of actually taking that larger amount of capital, they're kind of a little further along and have a team that is much more robust. Now, that's not always the case, but those are some of the factors that they pointed to in the outperformance.
So my background's in neuroscience. I've always been fascinated with why people do what they do. Just part of growing up, I guess kids are being mean to you and you go, why? But so when I started, Women Can Be Angels, and I started asking the question about, why is it that the majority of angels are still predominantly male? Like, what's going on here? And some of the misinformation that's out in the community, I got into looking at the decision-making process between males and females, typically, right? And it actually has anthropological roots, right? So you go way, way back into the hunter-gatherers, right? In reproduction, right? So women can only reproduce so many times during their life, and while they're doing it, they're very vulnerable. So they have to be very selective as to who their partner is. And so innately, the decision-making process in terms of who am I going to partner with becomes this ingrained thing. Men, on the other hand, have a much better chance of reproducing if they produce more often, right? And it's more of an emotional decision. And if they do reproduce, right, and a bear or somebody from a warring clan's coming at them, they have to respond right then. They can't take the time to gather more information and ask questions. No, go stop the threat, right? And so, thousands of years later, things have changed a little bit, but the decision-making process hasn't, right? Women still are much more methodical about the diligence that they make before they make decisions, which from a process standpoint, if you gather more information before you make a decision, you have a better chance of being right. So it's not necessarily women are better than men. It's the decision-making process is going to lead you to make better decisions. Whereas men tend to make, ironically, more emotional decisions. And when you play that out in the founder space or in the corporate leadership space, it works out really well for women's numbers. When you put that into angel capital space, where the decisions need to be made quickly, the capital needs to be deployed quickly, that process actually works against women. Where even if women want to be angels and they want to get involved in it, to get themselves comfortable using their natural decision-making process, a lot of times it's too late. I tried to raise capital from a lot of women. I wanted to be the first woman-founded tech company that was funded primarily by women. Couldn't do it. Tried and couldn't do it because men were writing bigger checks faster, and I had to get my company going. So, the good news is, with the brain being plastic, we can always learn, and it's a process thing, it's not a genetics thing. So women can learn from men, and men can learn from women. And so we can blend these processes where women can start to make decisions faster with less information, become more comfortable about it, and men can learn about the value of diligence and asking more questions and maybe writing a little bit slower check, right? And it's not indecisiveness to ask more questions. And so and that's part of the reason why you get more people at the table, you lose some of those blind spots, and together you start to find this hybrid of processes that's a much better thing for everybody.
That's really, interesting perspective. I like how you're tracing back to our roots, because it does actually make a lot of sense. I guess I'll flip it on the other side, for the entrepreneurial side. Like, as an investor, for what I look at when I'm making decisions, it's purely on the founders. Like, yes, of course, market opportunity, you want to see that there's a real problem and a solution, but what matters is the team, the people who are going to actually go out and build this. And for me, it's always grit. And so it's never looking at male, female, or anything like that, but it's where this founder came from. And generally, the people who are grittiest are the ones who have gone through significant hardships in their lives, which is really funny, because a lot of startups that get funded are, white males from Stanford, right? Like, who have oftentimes have much more privileged lives, who haven't gone through hardships. And in reality, the grittiest people are the ones who have dealt, maybe come from more difficult upbringings, or been born in lower income families, or who are Black and brown because of the biases that they've dealt with, or are females. And so for me, I always gravitate towards that, because I know where I came from, and that built a lot of grit for me. And so I think it's just interesting as we look at how we invest and the biases and the decision-making processes. I also look at that with, like, Elizabeth Holmes, that she, I don't know why we're even bringing this up.
Sorry to bring it up.
But yeah. But it's interesting, because I think she, as a founder, I constantly have this conversation with my co-founder, my husband, about how I saw myself trying to mimic men more, my behaviors, how I was speaking, not speaking with a deep voice like Elizabeth Holmes, but being more of like a bro, because men were able to relate to me more than being this woman in a dress. Like, so I noticed my behaviors changed and my relationships changed with men. And so while it's horrible to look at Elizabeth Holmes and the things that she did, because she is probably like a narcissist or a sociopath by definition, she was actually, like, society is at fault for how she, like, we wanted that. You fake it till you make it. She was mimicking more of an aggressive man, going fast with fundraising, and it's the fault of the investors for not doing enough due diligence, right? Like, people wrote checks and they didn't check. They didn't do their own due diligence. And so while, of course, what she did is horrible, like, we need to learn from that and learn, like, what were the mistakes from the investors, angel investors' perspectives, but also, like, how society is looking at entrepreneurs and women and founders. Like, I think that she was in a difficult position as a woman, raising and trying to prove to the world that she can do it as a woman. Yeah.
Yep. Erica, is there anything you'd like to add?
You guys covered a lot. So I'm not sure I'd be able to add anything new to that. I agree with a lot of what you just said. I was actually really fascinated with that story, and, reading about what she did, like, why, and I had a similar conclusion that I didn't even think about it necessarily because she was a woman, but the whole, like, Silicon Valley, you have to fake it till you make it kind of thing. But then her deepening her voice and all of that, that's, I've kind of thought about that when I pitch. Do I lower my voice slightly? Do I carry myself differently? And everybody has their different, like, like persona, I guess, when you're pitching. You want to come across relatable but professional, and I don't want to come across like too airheaded, or you kind of think through those things and have that kind of perception of, I want to be taken very seriously. And yeah, it has definitely crossed my mind of, will I be taken seriously as a woman in a tech space? And I always try to present myself as, hey, I've gotten a PhD, I've worked very hard, I have my patents, like I did all of that on my own, with great mentorship, and obviously not completely on my own, but I earned my spot here. And I go into my pitches with that mindset. And I think that's important for any woman who's getting into angel investing or entrepreneurship is, you've worked hard, you deserve to be here, and you don't necessarily have to be different than who you are when you are pitching. But it makes sense. I think everybody, man or woman, definitely puts on, a little bit of they try to show who they are while still being professional. But yeah, that's definitely an extreme example, but I think it's probably very common for women to do that more. Yeah, and I'd be curious to maybe talk to entrepreneurs in general to see, like, do women do that more? I assume they probably do.
It's speed dating.
Yeah.
Right. And so on the one hand, you don't want to be somebody you're not, because you don't want
Yeah.
to get into a relationship with an investor that doesn't work. Like, that's
Exactly.
The point isn't just to get the check. The point's to find a good match.
Yeah.
So if you're not being real, good luck with that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I mean, you're still going to put your best foot forward. You're still on a date, right?
Yeah.
You're still going to do your makeup and look nice, right? You're not going to go out in
Exactly.
your pajamas, but you're trying to look nice, and they are too, right?
Yeah.
The investor's also on a date,
Exactly.
right? So both sides are coming to the table to try to find this good match, and I think it's important for folks on both sides of the table to remember that.
Yeah, and I also want the investors that are investing in me to care about my story. And you were talking about the story of the entrepreneur being important. I always try to share my story, make sure that comes across, because I want to have partners that relate to me and know and appreciate the work that I put in, but also see, it's a relationship. You need to make sure that you guys are on the same page, and maybe there's a great investor, but not the right one for you. So that's definitely a big part of it too.
So I feel like we could talk for hours about all of these things, and we're all very passionate about all of this. So of course we could talk for a long time, but we're at the end of our time. So before we take a few questions, are there any upcoming local regional events or anything that you all would like people to know about or to check out?
Yeah, we have the Techstars Demo Day for Industries of the Future, which will take place on May 26th. It will be held at the UT Student Auditorium. It's going to be a huge party and gathering, food, drinks, a celebration of the companies and the three partners, UT, Oak Ridge, and TVA. So we do want the community to come and support the companies and the big vision of what we're trying to build here in Knoxville and East Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah, Women Community Angels doesn't have any events scheduled just yet. We're getting ready to restart ours. But if you want to go online to our website, which is womencanbeangels.org, we do have our Angel Investing 101 videos up there. It's 3 short 20-minute videos that just give you a really good overview as to what angel investing is, why it's important, and how to think about it in terms of making the decision about whether or not you want to get into it.
And I would just add, if you're at all interested in angel investing and you haven't dipped your toe in yet, the first stop is to go to these demo days and just get excited about companies, see what people are talking about, how they're pitching, and if you're really interested, then ping the person who's hosting the demo day and say you're interested. How do you get in? But the other thing is the education piece, and I would like to make a plug for the Angel Capital Association. It's our national group of angel investors, our all of the angel networks and funds are involved with it to some extent. It's a professional network. But they also have an entrepreneur track in there, a lot of free resources for that, and they have Angel University where you can go plug into a cohort and kind of soup to nuts get immersed in angel investing and really kind of get your sea legs first and get to meet a lot of other funds and networks out there that may be a right fit for your own personal thesis. So it's great.
I'll have one more plug. Cheltawee Angel Investors Group meets today after this event, and it meets monthly. So if you're interested, you should come. Like, even if you're new to it, just come, see some of the companies, get exposed and excited. It's a community of individuals who are passionate about investing. So come and learn, and everyone would be happy to have you.
Great. So we can take a few questions. I didn't know if there's any in the chat. There's 2 questions. Okay.
Okay. Regarding biases from women angels to women founders, have you experienced sharing that as an issue from the get-go to address the elephant in the room? And if so, did it make a difference?
Well, it's funny because I think we sort of have the opposite with a lot of our companies. They've come to us and said the experience was really different pitching to a group of women than most of the rooms they walk in, and they're pitching to groups of men. And it's been a positive experience for them. We call ourselves a dolphin tank instead of a shark tank. We sort of nudge and prod, and one of my partners is a psychologist. We like to ask a lot of the squishy questions, but we're serious about what we do, and we're pretty hard with diligence. I do know that there are other networks out there that I think some people it's been harder to get in the door with, and I don't know if that's kind of a women to women thing or not. I mean, Tricia did sort of express that she'd experienced that before. I think it really varies. Most of the groups I've been involved in have been very, I think, supportive of entrepreneurs. You got to make the mark, though, right? We're not gonna, if you're not pitching a company that is scalable, if you can't answer the most basic questions, yeah, we're probably going to be tough on you. But so is any other angel group.
I think some of it is, if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to pitch, you want to do your diligence with who you're getting into bed with. So you want to look at the investors. You want to look at their portfolio. If they have a portfolio where they have no female founders, it's generally one of 2 scenarios. Either they're not going to be interested in you for whatever reason, or they very much are because they're trying to find some diversity. And so the trick is you want to find out what that is. And so thanks to LinkedIn and some other platforms, the chances of you being more than 2 degrees from any of those people's, not great. Like you probably know somebody who knows them. So just start, ping your network, start finding out about, do you know about them? Have you worked with them? Look at their portfolio, call the founders of the companies in their portfolio, ask them what their experience has been. And then you can find out a lot about who you're going on a date with.
Yeah, I would also mention, though, that like for a founder, there's a power dynamic, and that's what makes it difficult for founders, that you're going in to a group of investors who can seem scary because they're the gatekeepers who have all this money that can help you get to the next stage. So you don't have the ability to have an upfront conversation about biases because you are trying to articulate something and showcase who you are. Like, you are limited to the information you can share to your investors because you don't want to share too much to scare them away. So like there's a fine line of what how upfront you actually want to be, because things can actually damage a relationship if you are too upfront with them in terms of confronting biases. So the power dynamic can alter that and make it much more difficult for a founder to navigate some of these relationships.
And one more question. What is the average amount of a first investment?
So check sizes, it really depends on the company, but usually an individual investor, that I would say $25,000 for an individual check. But if you're with a fund or network, you're committing maybe that amount or a little between 25, 50, maybe 100 over like a 5-year period, right? But for first checks, and sometimes they'll take, $10,000 checks, but that's a lot of checks. So what happens is you have all these little tiny owners on your cap table that add up. So, entrepreneurs would prefer to have fewer larger checks. So sometimes what happens is that these special purpose vehicles are created so that multiple checks of 5, 10,000 can come in. But usually, I don't know, Eric, if it goes below 5 in this market, but I don't think, that would be a very, very low check size. So probably at least 10 to begin to play, and then usually for an individual just to write a check into a company, it's like 25. Would you say that's about right, Tricia?
Yeah, for angels that I really liked, I was willing to go down to 10. But generally, I was taking checks between 25 to 100,000 from individual angels.
So are there any questions from our audience here for our panel?
So just as a sidebar, I'm a founder raising money from an all-male investment fund. I did get it behind their first investment, but it has been crazy. So some of the things that it's like we were learning together. Actually, she's on the legal team that's been helping me close the deal, and so it's just been wild, but exciting, and just hearing your all's perspective has been really great. So thank you for sharing. I guess a question, a couple of brands that I used to follow like super closely, like Glossier or Outdoor Voices, I've just been reading more and more articles about how they actually, that their problem wasn't raising money, it's that they raised too much too fast. And now, there's a potential that Glossier and Outdoor Voices already kicked out the CEO, and so their companies are going crazy even though they're on this high growth. So I guess if you're the opposite problem, which I have this problem, but you get there, how do you determine, or what advice do you give people that you're like, okay, you're raising too much money? How do you help people set that pace? That's just been an interesting thing for me to watch happen. So I'm like, what if somebody does just throw all this money at you? Do you say no, or how do you gauge that? So just curious.
Yeah, so I would say you always want to be able to answer the question, why do you want the money and what are you going to do with it? And then you always need to be thinking further down the road, right? As the founder and potentially a CEO, that's your job, is to be thinking out that far anyway. And so if you get this money, what are you going to do with it? What is it going to do for the company? Where does it get you to? Then what, right? So is it going to be another raise? Is it going to be a scale through revenue? Is it going to be an exit? What are you doing with it? And so the answers to those questions should tell you how much you actually need and then how to go get it. Does it make sense to partner with somebody who's going to want equity because they're bringing amazing network to the table and they're going to open up these doors for you that's going to bring in revenue that's so worth it? Or is it something where you're much better off to bootstrap it and get to a point where you can debt fund your growth, where you can keep control? Everybody's got a different adventure, so they have to answer those questions for themselves, but that's fundamentally what you want to ask yourself, is what are you going to do with the money and then what?
Yeah, I love this question, and it's something that so many founders are dealing with right now because we have astronomical valuations, which companies will never meet. And so a lot of my companies who are dealing with, the cycles of fundraising, how I guide them is to think about, one, as a CEO and founder, there are people who were born to be fundraisers, like founders who are not only raising their seed, but their Series A and Series B simultaneously. They're so strategic about all those investors in the pipeline and how to get to those. And so while that's really difficult, you need to know what the money is for and where it's going to. But if you are also taking a valuation that you even know is probably too high, you are going to shoot yourself in the foot, because your next fundraise, you will not hit those numbers, and then you're going to go a down round and you could be shutting down. So I hate the mentality of aggressive growth and scale. Y Combinator companies are raising during program with a cap of $40 million, which means it's difficult for angel investors to even participate because it's such a high valuation. But they're almost setting themselves up for disaster, because if the economy tanks, it is going to be so difficult for them to succeed and to hit those numbers. So as the founder, you need to be strategic to think about like what is realistic in my mind. I don't need to be super selfish and take these extreme valuations. I want to bring on investors who are true value add, and I'm happy to give up equity if they can deliver and work alongside with me.
Something else that I've been thinking about a lot. So I'm doing my seed round in tranches, and you can set those tranches up to be whatever length of time you want, quarterly, yearly, whatever it might be, to have investors pledge a certain amount of money, but issue it to you on an as-needed basis. So you can say $250 per quarter or something like that. And if you can get investors to agree to something like that, that ends up being really valuable to you in terms of not giving away as much of your company as you want early on, and also making sure you don't take too much, like you're saying. And that's kind of the approach that I'm taking right now. Yeah.
And just get really familiar with your cap table, and get one that you can play around with, and mess with the numbers, see what happens when you put a bunch of convertible notes one after the other in and how they convert. That really trips up entrepreneurs a lot, is that they'll get to like a third round of bridges they've done until they get to their Series A, where they can get that valuation, and all of a sudden they have cut their own equity in half because of the conversion that happens into that next equity round. So I just it is not something that founders pay a lot of attention to until everything kind of hits the fan. And, somebody's buying you as CEO, or the company's about to exit, and all of a sudden all the debt's coming due, which is on top of everything else. And then you're getting about this much, when you thought you were getting closer to 50%. So, just really keep an eye on that cap table and work with people who understand it.
We can do, are we at time? Looks like it. So Courtney, yep. I will let you close out.
All right. Well, Catherine, thank you for moderating the discussion. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, everyone who joined us today, both in person and virtually. As you leave, please feel free to take a copy of the Directory of Regional Capital Investment Firms and contact information from Karen and Christina. It's at the front counter. For our virtual audience, the directory link is posted in the chat. This event concludes our 3-part series on angel investing. You can watch and share recordings of all the event on YouTube or the Knoxville Chamber's website. Angel investing is just one of many ways our community can increase access to capital. There will be more opportunities on the horizon to learn how you can help grow our region's entrepreneurial ecosystem. You're welcome to stay and watch startups pitch to the Chiltawi Angel Network members. The meeting link can be found in the chat. Thank you all and have a great evening.